The following podcast contains spoilers and words that my mother would prefer I did not say. We watched a thing. We watched a thing.
Hello, thank you for joining us. This is We Watched a Thing. As always, I'm Topher and he's Billy.
As always.
As always. I'm just assuming no one's listened in a couple of months.
Oh, that is hurtful.
I know it's not true.
You want to know something absolutely crazy? I found this out today and it blew my mind. There have now been more episodes of We Watch a Thing post Topher than there were of Bears on Film.
That tracks. I'm not weirded out by that.
Really? I don't know.
Yeah.
That just, when I found that out, I was like, no, that can't be right. It felt like we were Bears on Film for like a year at least.
No, we realised very quickly that people were coming to us expecting commentary on homoerotic cinema and were not impressed when that's what it wasn't.
Yeah, the best review we ever got was still the one that was like, why aren't they talking about Grizzly Adams? Movies with bears in them. I still have a Bears on Film sticker on my car. How you been anyway, mate? It's been a minute. What have you been up to?
Well, it hasn't been that long since we talked about Dune.
Well, that's true. We have talked about Dune.
The recently. Other one.
The bad one. But what have you been up to?
1984's Dune is the drunk uncle of Thanksgiving and Christmas.
I mean, for you, it hasn't even been that long since you've spoken on mic about this Dune, because you did a guest spot on another podcast when you're not even a podcaster anymore.
That's true. I'm still in demand.
You know what's funny? I offered with Sam. He reached out to both of us, said, hey, do one of you want to jump on this? I was like, yeah, I can do it. He was like, sounds good, Toph. Get the guy who's not on a podcast anymore.
What can I say? Sam Hurley, he's a man of taste.
Well, what have you been up to anyway, buddy?
Same as when I was on this podcast. Nothing.
Yeah, that tracks. Shall we talk about a thing that we watched, mate?
I'd like to.
Let's do it.
I'd sure like to.
This week we got to your most anticipated film of the year, Dune, a 2021 American epic science fiction film directed by Denis Villeneuve, written by Villeneuve, Jon Spaihts and Eric Roth. It's the first of a planned two-part adaptation of the 1965 novel by Frank Herbert. It stars Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Zendaya, Chang Chen, Charlotte Rampling, Jason Momoa and Javier Bardem. What a hell of a lineup there.
Did you just skip Dave Bautista?
I said Dave Bautista.
Okay.
And what is it about, Toph?
It is about at high level, it's about galactic politics, not unlike Phantom Menace. Higher level, it's about the fallacy of the notion of the savior figure and most crucially, the white savior figure.
Yes, yeah, which is pretty much how you described 84's Dune as well.
Yeah, but unlike the book, and unlike as I think we will see develop further in part 2 of this film, which thankfully is going to happen, 1984's Dune really just embraces the living God aspect of it, with none of the critiques that are in the book. It's just like, bow down, bitches, for he is the Kwisatz Haderach.
He is the Kwisatz Haderach. I was
one of the great scenes in cinema history. Cue the rain.
I was really starting to worry that we weren't going to get the part 2 to this film. I thought that this might go the way of Blade Runner 2049, especially when
I was terrified.
Because this got delayed so many times, and then the week before release, they made the very strange decision to release it on streaming the day before cinema release. Like, not even same day, like the day before. And I'm like, wow, are they trying to kill this movie? But lo and behold, I guess it did do well enough that we are getting the sequel. Thank God, because this really is half a fucking movie.
Yep.
So, as you said in 84's Dune, you've read the book. You're a fan of the book. You were very much looking forward to this film. I was really surprised, having not read the book and having seen 84's Dune quite recently. This felt like almost an entirely different story to me. Like, obviously there are some plot points that cross over, but it was very, very, very different. Which one is closer to the book? I'm guessing this one, right?
Look, this one is by far and away closer to the book in terms of like the spirit of the book. And thematically, This is following it better. In terms of if you had to actually just lay down beat by beat which one actually like ticks more, yes, here's this scene, here's that scene, that'd be an interesting exercise. And I suspect maybe actually it's 84's.
Yeah, right.
But because it tonally misses the book by so far,
yeah.
If you're like, which one's the not even better adaptation, although, like, spoiler alert, it's this one. But even if you were to say which is the closer adaptation, it's definitely this one, even if it's not following the scene-by-scene beats as closely.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And, it still does. It is still following a lot of scenes.
Yeah.
Like, if not verbatim. Like, yes, it's like, that's what happened in the book, and here's this scene in the film. Like, it's pretty faithful.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, cool.
Except that Dr. Kynes, who was the whitest man on Earth, is now a black woman.
Yeah.
Which I was in favour of. I've got to be in favour of it because maybe best on ground. Sharon Duncan-Brewster, who I know from nothing.
Yep.
Thought she was fucking sensational in this film.
Fantastic. I mean, let's hop straight into the cast then. I mean, massive lineup in this film.
Kind of stacked. I remember when, after this film had been announced, and I was Denis Villeneuve, one of my absolute favourite working directors.
Yeah, yeah.
Adapting something that you're excited about. I was already pretty well out of my tree. And then I just remember that period where every couple of weeks or months, you'd get they'd release like another 3 names or something.
Yes.
And it was just this constant, like, not only do I love those 3 people, but it was always just such great cast. It was like, this person's playing that person. It was like, that's fucking perfect.
Yeah.
And this person's playing that person. It was like, that's fucking perfect. It was so great.
Yeah. That slow drip feed of casting announcements caused such massive hype for me for this movie because, yeah, it's a completely stacked cast and not just big names. This isn't the Mario movie, which that casting is cooked. But these are like really very talented actors and actresses. Nearly all good performances in this film. There was one performance in this film that I thought was very weak. I don't know if you thought the same thing or if you can pick who I'm talking about. Do you want to have a guess?
I'm going to guess you're not the biggest fan of Chalamet.
I actually didn't mind Chalamet. I've heard quite a few people critique Chalamet. Our mate Sam Hurley was not a fan of Chalamet. Dave Bautista in this film I found really, really weak. And it disappointed me because I've liked him in the past. Only days before this, I finally got to Blade Runner 2049. And in the short bit he's in that film, I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was so wooden in this film. And it's not just his performance. I thought the writing of that character was really one note and just really, like, honestly, give me Sting back.
That's not the same character.
It's not?
No. Wrong Harkonnen, mate.
Either way, yeah, I was disappointed in Bautista in the film.
I wasn't disappointed by him. I thought everything he's got to do in this film is pretty one note.
Yeah.
We don't get a ton of Beast Rabban. I hope we get more of him in part 2.
Yeah.
But by no means did I dislike him. He's nowhere near, like, top of the class for me.
One thing that surprised me with how stacked this cast is how little some of them are in it. Let's talk Zendaya, who I believe is in a grand total of about 6 minutes in this film. And correct me if I'm wrong.
After being one of the dominating presences in the trailer.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, has 0 speaking lines or might have.
No, she has lines.
Does she?
She talks to Paul before he fights Jamis.
And she opens the film with a voiceover, doesn't she?
Yes, she does.
Yes. Which was another interesting thing, that it kicks off with voiceover. Like, this film isn't completely devoid of exposition. The first kind of 10 to 15 minutes, you get voiceover of her, followed by the scene where Chalamet is studying, and you just get this voiceover of him reading the texts telling you everything about this world. And I was a little bit like, okay, all right, so we're not losing all of this. But yeah, there are several of these big cast names. Jason Momoa is another one who's really in this film very little. Even Bautista is not in this film that much. I'm assuming...
Yeah, I think, because Momoa, I think, casts a pretty big shadow over the film. Momoa's charisma is just jacked up to 11 in this film. It is, I think I can say pretty handily, my favourite Jason Momoa performance.
Yeah.
He's not just being massive charismatic dude, although he is both massive and charismatic.
Yeah.
I really liked him in this film. But certainly, there's other characters like Thufir Horwat, the Mentat, and like Josh Brolin's Gurney Halleck, that at this point in the story have just been absent from the screen for a long time.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming that a lot of, obviously Zendaya is going to have a large part to play in part 2. So, yeah, I just thought it was interesting that it was such a stacked cast. It's almost like doing season 1 of a show and casting a bunch of people, but you're like, look, you're not really going to be in it till season 2. And just assuming you get picked up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they made this film without the knowledge that there would definitely be a part 2. It's like, well, everyone do good work because
we all
want
want
to
to
John
John Carter.
This.
And I've become a massive Zendaya fan personally. I loved Malcolm and Marie. I think that she has done some excellent work. I'm really looking forward to seeing her play more of a part in part 2 for sure.
Yeah, she's one of. I mean, look, I'm always going to be massively looking forward to part 2.
Yeah.
But seeing exactly how they decide to use that character is, I think, a very interesting question, and it could pay off. It could pay off hugely, I think.
I agree.
Both her and her Fremen father for that point. We didn't see a ton of we don't have a ton of Stilgar in this film.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it comes in, spits on the ground. It's fucking great. That scene is great.
Yeah, I honestly, if nothing else, this film gave me giant expectations for part 2. I cannot wait for part 2 now already.
I was a very happy boy.
Me too. So where were you on Chalamet then? You were a fan?
Yeah, in general, I am a fan.
Same.
And Paul's not an easy character, I wouldn't have thought, to portray. There's so much of it is internalized, so much of it is just plain weird shit.
Yeah.
That is for both, I think, the actor and also just as for the film. Paul's a tough character.
Yeah, definitely.
To try and get across everything that's going on with that guy is a big ask.
Yes,
I think.
And this film doesn't use the crutch of voiceover like 84's did either.
The second movie.
You know who else I thought was exceptional was Rebecca Ferguson. And Lady Jessica, again, this is probably closer to the book, I'm guessing, very much a main character in this film as compared to the 84 one. Really, this film is Paul and Jessica on, it's a bit of a Fellowship of the Rings of those two. And she has a big part to play and is really fantastic.
They've expanded Jessica a bit for the film.
Okay.
But not a ton. She's a very important person.
Yeah.
In the book. But I think they went out of their way in trying to make the story less of a sausage fest.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was the gender flipping of Dr. Kynes, totally worked.
Yep.
There's not only expanding the role of Jessica a little bit in the film, but also just making sure that the audience is aware of how important she is. There's that great in the meeting between Paul and the Reverend Mother. It was one of my favorite little moments in the film, actually, when she's talking about how important Paul is, and he says, because of who my father is, and she just immediately says, because of who your mother is.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really good.
Unlike 84's Dune, I actually completely understood what was happening at every point in this film. It was actually very followable. It is a dense movie, particularly, I guess, thematically. And as you say, a lot of the characters it's a thoughtful movie. It's not like their thoughts and feelings and motives are handed to you on a plate. There's no second moon. But it was so much more understandable than 84's Dune. And I agree with you. The way that they got across Jessica's importance in this universe was what really made the difference for me between these two films. I mean, there's a lot of differences, but like structurally and narratively, that was the big one for me, was just her importance in this universe.
Yeah, I was a fan of a bunch of the world. I don't think they don't get bogged down in world building in this film, but some of the ways that Villeneuve managed to just convey a feeling about something, like sticking with the Bene Gesserit and their visit when the Reverend Mother does go a bit seven with Paul, with what's in the box. And this is also, and we may well spend more time on this, but the look of the scene of the entrance and exiting of the Bene Gesserit, the feeling that Greg Fraser imparts on that scene with the lighting.
Yes. Oh.
They don't, in that scene, they're not telling you anything really specific about this order, but they do a spectacular job of just conveying a feeling about these people. I thought that scene, or those, the two scenes of them coming and going, was just pretty elite shit.
Yeah. I agree with you. You said it at the start. I think Villeneuve is one of the finest working directors today, and I've now happily seen all of his films almost. I've seen all of them for like the last 15 years, so I'm missing like his first couple of very indie films. But watching his progression is incredible, and I don't know about you. This is a fucking B Dizzle's big call right here. B Dizzle's big call. I think this is the best looking film I have ever seen. Like, this is a beautiful, beautiful film from start to finish. Like, I know that this isn't your man Deakins, but I mean, good God, this is a stunning looking film. And not only stunning, but always serving the purpose. Like, the cinematography, the lighting, the production design, this film is fucking phenomenally beautiful.
Well, yeah, like, what a bar you've got to clear. If you're Greg Fraser, Melbourne's Greg Fraser, I think you call him.
Yeah. Who you've brought up on the show before, I know. He's done a couple of films that you've loved.
Oh, already even before this film, I had a lot of Greg Fraser stock.
Yeah.
And you're working with a director who has worked more than once with Roger Deakins.
Yep.
On Arrival, he was working with another one of my favorites, Bradford Young. Arrival is a stunning film.
Oh, I love that movie.
So the bar when working with Villeneuve from the visuals is really high.
Exactly.
Thankfully, Fraser's got that, the grounding in having done Rogue One and season 1 of The Mandalorian, of having working a bunch with visual effects. Which it's impossible, I think, to imagine a film where the elements that were shot in camera and the visual effects marry up and work as well as they do in this film if you haven't done it before. It's just like, you can't imagine that that's doable if you don't have the grounding Greg Fraser's got in it. Because he knocks this film completely out of the park. It's amazing.
And as you say, like the stock, like he's coming off the back of Villeneuve's pair up with Deakins on Blade Runner 2049, which
finally delivered Deakins an Oscar.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, like, Deakins got an Oscar for cinematography. It was up, I believe it won the Oscar for visual effects as well. So that marrying in that film was insane.
And you wouldn't be shocked if a double up was going to happen again.
I mean, absolutely it should. Like, absolutely
I think this will romp it in for visual effects.
Yes, easily.
Because one thing the Academy loves in the visual effects category is if there's the prestige pick.
That's right.
They take it.
Yeah.
I think this will romp it in for visual effects.
Yeah.
And it is like one of the great things about, I mean, you touched on it right at the beginning, that this did, of course, come out on HBO Max. It was available for people to watch. I'm incredibly happy that I held out and saw this at the cinema, because it is a phenomenal theatre experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
And for once, we've done it, everyone's done it. CGI has a bad name.
Yeah.
And it is so nice to sit in a theatre and be wowed by CGI for all the right reasons.
That's right. I mean, there is a huge amount of CGI in this film, a huge amount. And yet, it would be very, very hard, even for a VFX artist like myself, to go through this film and try identify the CGI. I'm sure that there is plenty of set extension, just as like a minor thing. I mean, obviously you've got the big things. You've got the the body armor, which sadly isn't as boxy as the 84 one. I kind of miss that design. So there are those big obvious things, but this film just the blend is so beautiful in this film. Don't get me started on the sandworms. The design of the sandworms is incredible, and I'm sure that that's 100% CGI, but if you told me that some of that was puppetry or animatronics, I wouldn't be able to argue with you because it's so physical that it just works so well.
One of my continuing pet peeves about a lot of CGI is that it feels divorced from gravity.
Yes.
Things just feel like they have no weight to them.
Yep.
And then, things like the sandworms in this film, there's this giant thing busting out of the ground, and it's like, oh my God, that thing weighs as much of as a city.
Exactly, yep. Every time you can see it moving and you can see the earth crumbling and shaking, it just gives it such weight.
Another shout out for just shit-hot visual effects. The Sardaukar troopers dropping down as if they're attached to a rope, but they aren't. Oh my, what a fucking shot.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Fucking, that whole sequence actually, if then the Fremen are just gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they rise up out of the sand and murder the shit out of them as this dust cloud engulfs, the desert itself is swallowing these intruders.
Yeah.
Fuck, you fucking rule, Villeneuve.
I mean, I meant it when I said, regardless, I haven't even really given too much of my thoughts on this film, but regardless of anything else I thought about it, I do think that this is the best looking film that I've ever seen. And like you said, I'm so grateful that I waited to see this in a cinema because it is stunning. There's not a bad shot in this film. It's fucking glorious.
One of the just phenomenal choices that Fraser makes with the lighting of this film. I brought this up talking to Sam a couple of days ago on his podcast.
Oh, so I'm getting the sloppy seconds.
You're getting the slops. Hopefully I'll do it better here.
Yeah, I hope so.
The I think inspired choice to lean so heavily into darkness when conveying the heat of where they've come to. When they first set foot on Arrakis, you get this feeling to keep it all intertwined in the Villeneuve verse, going back to another Deakins film in Jarhead when they first arrive in the desert.
Yeah.
It's like Deakins overexposes it by half a stop or something just so it really hits you. And likewise here, going from the green and blue Caladan to Arrakis, it's just this, just genuinely blaring light when you've been sitting in a cinema and your eyes have, your pupils are fucking wide open.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, bang, it hits you with Arrakis and it is fucking near blinding.
Yeah.
Then from that point, anytime they're inside, it's dark as shit because, of course, these people are just constantly hiding from the heat. So it's like the opposite of Midsommar, where it's just drenched in sunshine. It's really quite dark, which is so counterintuitive of how you would convey this brutal climate.
Yeah.
But it fucking works beautifully.
Well, absolutely, because that's real life. I've been to hot climates before, and you do, until you need to go outside, you hide in your room with all the windows closed and the aircon set to 15 degrees. That's just what you do. So it makes total sense to me. And I love you said it doesn't get bogged down in the world building, and you're completely right. It doesn't at all. That's what's so genius about this film is those little touches that give you the sense of this universe. The fact that they wear those suits that are filled with moisture that they can drink. And it's
you don't want to think too hard about the still suit.
You really don't.
Yuck.
You really, really don't. And it doesn't give you too much info about it either. It's enough that you can fill in your own head, but it's just one of those really nice touches that just adds to what this universe is.
One of my absolute favorite effects shots in the film is when they first, I think it's their first approach into the city of Arrakeen, when they've just got to Arrakis. And there's a shot of them flying over the city, which I'm convinced this is intentional. I'm completely convinced that Villeneuve has done this with a bit of a wink to the audience, that as we fly over Arrakis and then approach this pyramid-like structure that is the seat of power, if you replace the sunshine and the sand with nighttime and rain, it's a Blade Runner shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's not even a Blade Runner 2049 shot. It's just a flat out Blade Runner shot.
Yeah.
Like if you did a really aggressive color grade of that shot and put in some rain effects and just put like the Tyrell emblem somewhere on that home base, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's Blade Runner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just very tickled by it. In fact, you can actually dig down a little bit deeper on that, I think, and say that you could almost imagine that Blade Runner and that Dune is just 8,000 years after Blade Runner.
Well,
and that the reason why there's no computers in this galaxy now is that look what happens when we allow these things to go out of control. You get something, yes, as gorgeous as Ryan Gosling, but also it goes bad.
I'm gonna come back to that in a minute. Before I do though, I just one of the things I fucking love about Villeneuve as a director is, like you said with the Blade Runner homage, is that you can very clearly see with him the puzzle pieces of things that have inspired him and other art that he brings to it. And it's like, you know, even though this is, I mean, pretty much a straight sci-fi film, really, like, and you can see that in his progression. He started with more kind of psychological thriller, and then we get Arrival, and then Blade Runner, and now this. He's moving towards being more of a genre director, I think. But you can still see all those other elements in this film. Like, this isn't a Star Wars film. And that might disappoint some people, and maybe it won't do as well at the box office because people might be hoping for or expecting a bit more of a swashbuckling sci-fi adventure. And it has elements of that, but it has so much more to it, which is fantastic. On the whole, you know, this being 8,000 years in the future thing, the one thing I had, which I found really interesting, and I wanted to talk to you about this to get your take on it. Having not read the book and having only seen 84's Dune, I never really thought about this until this film, and maybe I should have, but we actually get a date at the start of this film, which for starters I found strange because very rarely do we get that, especially with something this distant in the future. It just doesn't usually happen. Secondly, the names like Paul and Jessica and stuff. I know that obviously they look humanoid, but are these humans? Have they left Earth? Because I don't remember there being any mention of Earth. Like, obviously they're now living on different planets. In my head, every time I see a movie like this, I actually assume that it's an alien race. You know, like Star Wars. I've never thought of Luke Skywalker as a human, if that makes sense. I don't think of that being set as characters who have migrated from Earth. But this movie really got me thinking, is that explained in the book? Is this supposed to be our own timeline, for example?
It's a really good point, actually. Like, yeah, Star Wars, as you say, it's populated largely by human actors, but of course it's a different galaxy, so they can't be exactly human. They're just exactly very, very human-like.
Yes. Humanoid, yes. I would say, yeah.
Dune, yes, is the future of the human race.
Okay, all right.
I believe that at some point you do find out what actually happened to Earth, but I haven't read. I've read the first 3 Dune novels. I don't know what actually happened to Earth. I think it's just, but you just kind of get this feeling that something bad happened.
Yeah, the first 3 are the only Frank Herbert ones, right? And then after that, his son took over, or was it more than that?
I couldn't swear to how many. I think maybe there's more than the first 3 that are Frank, but I couldn't swear to it.
But yeah, as soon as the movie started and we got that date, it really just threw me off, and I couldn't stop thinking about whether these were in fact actual humans. And I found it very strange that names like Paul and Jessica have hung around in the zeitgeist for that long, you know, and they're very human characters as well, is what I find very interesting. Like, they make really human choices, and it's just... I just found it really interesting in that way. Let's talk about the score and the music. Obviously, we don't get the beauty of Toto, so that's a bit of a shame. But I loved the score for this film. I went home straight away and added it to my Spotify because it's banging.
Yeah, and Hans didn't go full.
It didn't go full Hans.
When Zimmer swings, he swings hard. And look, this is still it is still a big score in moments, like undoubtedly, but not to the point where in recent years where like Zimmer's almost become a caricature of Zimmer. I think.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of his work that he's done with Nolan. I don't overly love. This reminded me much more of the work he did on Blade Runner 2049, which I loved, but that was very heavily inspired by the original Blade Runner. So it was kind of hard to straddle that line between how much he brought to it. But this score was just fantastic.
And I think he skipped doing Tenet to do this.
Yeah, right. Well, good on him.
Broke with Nolan, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously it's been greenlit now. Is there any talk of, I'm assuming we're still a couple of years away from that. This isn't going to be one of those films where we get the sequel the following year.
No, I don't think you can pump this thing out in a Clint Eastwood time frame.
Clint Eastwood. You know, I was watching a game show today, right? It's not to get off track. I mean, that's not what we do here. We don't do this. I was watching a game show today, and it's a little bit like a Family Feud type game show where they ask a question and you have to give the top answers that survey results. The question was, what modern actor would you like to have a drink with, right? I hear modern actor. I don't go Clint Eastwood, but he was the top answer. And I'm like, what kind of people are you surveying?
Can Clint Eastwood leave the house?
Not without calling...
I mean, clearly he can. He had a film come out like 2 months ago.
Not without calling people unfortunately.
Like, people still want to have a drink with Clint?
I know. So the other, there's a couple of...
That guy is old.
Yeah. There were a couple of, like Tom Hanks was there, Tom Cruise, George Clooney. That all made sense. But then Clint Eastwood, I'm like, what in the fuck is with this?
I thought maybe the shock was going to be that Javier Bardem was right up there, because I think I would love to have a drink with Javier Bardem.
Yeah, that would be cool. Actually, he seems like he would be a pretty cool dude.
Oh, I think Bardem would be a great hang.
Yeah. Okay.
Ditto. Okay, I would love to have a drink with Bardem. I would love to have a drink with Momoa. I would love to have a drink with, my guy Oscar Isaac. You know.
Oh.
You know that I want to do more than have a drink with Oscar Isaac.
He's a dreamboat, isn't he?
Oh my God. Like, no wonder Jessica was like, I know I'm here for a purpose in this arrangement, but I'm just going to go ahead and fall in love with this guy because, no shit.
I mean, please arrange my marriage to Oscar any day. He's just a walking dream. And he's getting more attractive as time rolls on as well. He's like the opposite of us. Is he older than you?
He is older than me.
Yeah, I thought so. You couldn't tell, mate. Let's talk about Oscar Isaac, which we haven't yet. Also fantastic in this film. Also, given the runtime of this film, it's amazing how many characters actually have quite a small part to play. He's probably third or fourth lead, I guess. But still in it a surprisingly little amount. But the amount he is in it, he's just fantastic.
Yeah, he's a character who needs to cast a shadow long after he's gone.
Which he does.
Like, he just has to. For the story. So, yeah, fucking cast Oscar Isaac, because it'll work.
I mean, the shadow of his dick will hang around for 10 hours after he's left a room.
I mean, that's just crude.
You were thinking it.
You reckon that? Yeah. That's what you think I was thinking?
I reckon that's what you were thinking.
Okay.
Oh, cut it. But I'm in control now. I don't have to cut it.
I know. I haven't given much negative feedback yet. Having one of your characters say this is just the beginning, seconds before the film ends, it's pretty on the nose.
Yeah.
It's pretty on the nose. I did not like it.
It's almost as bad as when you start a movie and you freeze frame and you're like, yeah, that's me. Guess how I got here? It's like, yeah, no, you don't do it. Yeah, look, let's hop straight to the ending, because I do actually have some negatives. As I've said, so much of this film is incredible. I think the casting is insane. Everything about the production is brilliant. I think that the pacing is off. I do think that the film is too long, personally.
I could have it be longer.
Well,
I'm all for Villeneuve just getting lost upside his own asshole. It's fine. It's fine by me.
See, here's the thing. I know that many, many, many people had issues with the pacing of 2049. I actually didn't. For me, the pacing of this film is worse than that. I think that film actually holds quite steady. I think that this film is just too long. And I'm not talking a huge amount. I'm only talking 15 minutes, maybe 20. Like, I'm not saying you need to cut this back tremendously. But my biggest issue with the film is that it is half of a film. And that to me is a little bit of a cardinal sin to not, especially not knowing that you're getting a part 2 100% greenlit. You know, you look at Fellowship, for example, and like, yes, it's part of a trilogy, but it has an ending. Like, at the end of that film, you get a good feeling in you. You're like, okay, yeah, I know the story that we've seen so far and where we're headed. Whereas this film very much just ends. As you say, you get someone saying, well, this is just the beginning, which, yes, completely on the nose. But without that, you kind of have nothing. Like, it just ends. And I'm not saying that you need heaps more, but I just think that the pacing of those final 10 minutes or so, and I know that, okay, sure, he meets up with the Fremen, he sees Zendaya, this woman that he's been seeing in his dreams, and I guess that's meant to be your kind of moment of closure for this film. But for me, it just wasn't quite enough.
The thing I like about the point where they chose to make the cut between part 1 and part 2 is that it's less about story and plot and more about Paul.
Yeah, okay.
He has these visions of his own death, and to go, high minded, full wank about it. You kind of you get the death of Paul Atreides, or at least you get the death of Paul Atreides, the innocent, right at the end of the film when he himself takes a life. And very much like, if you know what's coming, it's a massive point between Paul Atreides, the man-child, and what Paul becomes. It's a real line in the sand kind of moment. Okay. So that, from that perspective, I like where they decided to do it. Okay.
See, I guess I don't come into it with that same knowledge as you, but I mean, the way you explain it, that sounds pretty great. So, I mean, would you class this then as like a coming of age story more than anything? Is this more of a character study about Paul than anything else?
I don't know if coming of age is not how I would describe it, but again, I can't be divorced from what I know about it. So for me, it's not a coming of age. It's a loss of innocence.
I do like those kind of journeys. I do like a loss of innocence journey. So obviously, by the end of this film, we know that Lady Jessica is pregnant. You know the story better than I do. Are we getting a time jump? Is part 2 going to pick up exactly where this ended, or are we going to pick up with, because by the end
I
of
wouldn't
the
be surprised
film,
if part 2 picks up 6 months down the track. I wouldn't be at all shocked if that happens.
By the end of the film, we need the little girl screaming, "He is the Kwisatz Haderach!" with lightning around her.
If we don't get that, what do we sit through 5 hours for?
What the fuck? Why would I sit through this shit if I don't get that little girl screeching with lightning all around her?
Doing a weird dance.
He is the Kwisatz Haderach! Can't say it enough. If you don't get that moment, it like, you're fucked up, Villeneuve.
Like you said, we riot. It just depends on, like, there's probably some kind of fun storytelling in there of, like, just have a fucking montage of becoming a Fremen. But then, do they really want to... I suppose it depends on how much Villeneuve wants you to bed you down in the world of the Fremen.
Yeah, okay.
Or are we just like, all right, let's skip forward 6 months and get to where we need to get to here?
Let me ask you this.
They could spend the first 45 minutes of part 2 getting to 6 months down the track, or they could start 6 months down the track, and either can work.
Let me ask you this. Do you see a scenario, and is there enough source material? Because, okay, we know that this is a part 1, and now we know that a part 2 has been greenlit. Is there a scenario where we end up with a part 3, where he decides to split this story? Like, is there enough source material there in this first book that he will possibly split this even further before? And do you see us ever getting an adaptation of book 2 based on this?
Not with how much they've covered in part one. I think part two just has to be the rest of the first book.
So source material-wise, you think we've covered?
Yeah, but I know Villeneuve is interested in a third film.
Yeah, okay. Based on the second book.
Yeah. Whether that would be book 2 or does he want to try and do 2 and 3? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, but I know he's interested in more than just one more film.
That's interesting. So this was your most anticipated film of the year. We did a little bonus for the patrons. I was going to say, I think it was the year before last. We did a little bonus for the patrons on most anticipated films, and this was right up there for you. Did this meet your expectations, or was it close at least?
It is unreasonable to think that any film could reach my expectations of Villeneuve adapting Dune. I was giddy beyond all reason. So were my expectations met? Not entirely, but yeah, no shit. Did I walk out satisfied? Yes, I did. This is a really good film.
It is, yeah. How are you scoring it then?
8 out of 10.
I'm also an 8. For me, I'm not sure if this film at this stage is as strong as 2049. I really, really loved that film. That said,
I'm really hoping that people come to 2049 over the next period of time, like as happened with Blade Runner.
Yeah, definitely. I truly believe, though, that a part 2 could turn me around. Absolutely. Because let's face it, as this is half a film, a part 2 could affect how I feel about this one. I don't know about you, but Endgame made me like Infinity War less. So,
Well, see, I think Infinity War looks pretty good up against Endgame.
But I could definitely see, my love for this film going up over time. Like, that wasn't my last watch of it. I'd love to get to this in cinemas again before it's done its run.
I mean, one of my great hopes was, like with 2049, that Villeneuve just, that he would go for a vibe. And he did, bless him.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was fun. It was awesome to have you back on mic, buddy.
I had so few notes as well. It was very un-me.
Oh, you did a bit of a B-dizzle on it, did you?
Yeah, I was such a nerd. I was so prepared back in the day.
It's more fun when you go in loosey-goosey, isn't it?
It's like, it's jazz, man.
It's jazz. You play some notes with it. And look,
it's the points you don't make.
Next week, I will be joined by Paul from The Countdown talking about one of his favourite films, Mad Max Fury Road, a film which I've only seen once and did not love. So we'll see what happens there. And then the week after that, all going well, I'll be joined by Doody Dootram to talk about Spider-Man. What's this one called? No Way Home?
No Way Home?
And then, of course, it's Christmas. So, as is tradition, you're going to be hopping back with me to do a little Christmas special.
God, people will have had a gutful.
They'll be sick of Topher, mate. They'll be like, who the fuck is this guy? Give me back B-Dizzle.
The New Testament listeners.
No one's going to have a gutful of you, mate. Or do we know what we're going to do yet for our Christmas episode?
Yeah, we're doing Die Hard 2.
That's right. 5 years after Die Hard, getting to the sequel.
Yeah, the next greatest Christmas movie.
So just clarify for me. It is set at Christmas, right?
Yeah, it's Christmas Eve.
Okay, so it is literally like Die Hard then.
Yeah.
But no Gruber then.
He's well dead.
Yeah, he did fall off that building. Have you seen those amazing advent calendars that are like Nakatomi Plaza? And it has Hans Gruber on it, and every time you pull out a tab for a day, he falls slightly further down. So by Christmas Day, he hits the ground. Fucking cool stuff.
That's good.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with me, you can do that at wewatchedathing.com or wewatchedathing@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under the handle @wewatchedathing. If you want to help support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/wewatchedathing, and I'll catch you next week.
Watch a movie, folks.
You did it!